Now, it's World Mental Health Day, and joining us is a striker with more than 500 career appearances. But he suffered from addictions and had an emotional breakdown. But he's come through it all, and he now calls himself the Fear Coach. So welcome along to Drewe Broughton. Really good to see you, Drew. Look, you went through it, didn't you? You played for a whole host of clubs, 500 appearances, as we just mentioned. When did you first become aware that things weren't quite right for you?
Looking back, probably 8 years of age.
Wow.
Yeah, I think looking back, it's, you have a huge passion and desire, and I remember falling in love with football at 9, like we all do as guys who end up playing. And that brings a certain pressure on, because then now it's like, okay, I want to be a footballer. And you put that line in the sand, even if you don't talk about that. And then, so I think every year you're facing that fear of failure, and you carry that.
From 8 years of age?
Yeah, I think so. Looking back, I think because you want something that badly. So if you don't achieve it, then that's sitting with you every day. And of course, then you go into the pro game, and it's just there's no real space or place to feel and be allowed to feel and talk about that.
When you say you didn't make it, you did make it. You made 500, but are you talking about the fact that you didn't make it?
Yeah, England, Premier League, for sure. That was the aim, and all the way up. By 18, I made my debut for Norwich City, at Wolves. Craig Bellamy was in my youth team, and the Bellas at the time, and Rob Green, the goalkeeper. So that was your yardstick. And every year then that you're not getting back to where these guys are, you're putting pressure on yourself. You're constant comparison. There's a desire to win all the time, and that can literally slip very quickly into perfectionism and over control, which I suffered from massively. But I think that's really common. It's really, really common.
Do you?
Absolutely. I mean, 2 weeks ago I was in the US. I've been working with a bunch of college athletes out there now and the coaches, and I sat with 20 college student athletes, and I had to get my head around how it runs out there. I mean, incredibly professional. It's amazing. 20 one-on-ones, 1 hour one-on-ones, and I sat with the athletic director at the end and some of the coaches, and I said, look, every single one of them is struggling. Male, female, these are top young athletes, 18 to 23, perfectionism, just can't sleep, got to be the best, got to win, got to play what you just start, it's coming out. No space to just,
How do you control that though? Because I think it's something that, I don't think the pandemic's helped. I think we're in a situation where we've all come out of a pandemic, and I think the anxiety levels are through the roof.
They are, and look, social media and streams of content, of course, increase it. But I think the fundamental thing is 10 years, 20 years, 50 years ago, is a desire. You're a competitive individual, guys, and that brings a certain level of pressure, constant comparison. Every game, is a game closer to where you need to go, or further away from where you are if you're not involved. So I just think fear, right? Just fear is the under. That's why 2 years ago I thought, right away, someone said, what do you? I said, fear. I'm dealing with fear all day long. Phone calls, Zooms. So it's been interesting. I think the way we get this shift, I think the only way, there's some great campaigns going on. I'm aware of the work the PFA do. I was a rep there for many years with the clubs. I think, and I came to this 3 years ago, I think the only way to really create a shift is coach education. If we look at guys like Graham Potter, who did a degree in emotional intelligence, with fear all day long, phone calls, Zooms, so it's been interesting. I think the way we get this shift, I think the only way, there's some great campaigns going on. I'm aware of the work the PFA do. I was a rep there for many years with the clubs. I think, and I came to this 3 years ago, I think the only way to really create a shift is coach education. If we look at guys like Graham Potter, who did a degree in emotional intelligence, that's incredible. He has a way of, and speaking to players recently about just his presence in that club already. This is nice, I feel a bit free, a bit lighter. So these are the things. So I wrote some coach education 3 years ago, and I've taken over 150 coaches globally through that now, on this whole thing: ego, fear, comparison, authenticity, empathy. So,
do you think the FA has a responsibility here and should be perhaps doing more?
Yeah, but it's difficult because, again, you're probably talking 50 pro-licensed coaches have come on here. Adi Boothroyd wouldn't mind me saying, Adi I've known since I was a young player, and Adi reached out to me when he left his post with England under-21s.
Yeah.
He wasn't in a great place himself, as coaches suffer as well. And he came on the education, and we met for 3-4 hours at a time, and him and I talked, and then he came in with the group. An incredible turnaround, and I think in that 8-week journey with the guys, he realised in himself that the very thing that made him great as a young coach, he'd slowly lost. And I think this loss of self for coach or player is where it sits. Fear of, well, can I just be this coach who drives desire and drives pressing and drives running, because isn't that old school? Can I shun all science and go, oh, my instinct says, which he did do as a young coach, but hanging on to that's very difficult. I mean,
how did you do it? I mean, you talk about you hit rock bottom in 2011. You had an emotional
10 years
breakdown.
now, 12 years.
So what made you turn it around?
It's 11 years this week, actually. I was just thinking today that I came out of Sporting Chance, and amazing. I think, I was intelligent as a player. I'm very sensitive, very driven. I was always the alpha man in the dressing room, but I'm also a thinker and I'm a feeler. It would be difficult for managers to understand me. I remember many managers looking at me, I can't quite understand him. He's tough, he's relentless, but...
You can see you here.
Yeah, he's sensitive. I was 18,
But the world's at your feet.
World's at your feet, yeah. I scored on my debut at Wolves. I was with England under 20s and everything's there, contract with Adidas, but why can't you hang on to it? It's that hanging on to self. And the more top players that I've been around, especially the last 3 years since it's grown in what I'm doing, I don't talk about it, but I've sat in hotels, I've sat in players' hotel rooms like for a game, driven in the dark, and I've they've rung me from airports and match day from locker rooms. Lads have rung me from the toilets in the dressing room. There's a clip on the High Performance podcast recently, Johnny Wilkinson talking about how he was England captain and desperately ringing his kicking coach on speed dial before an international. Such was the self-doubt in Johnny Wilkinson. And I see that a lot. Guys in the locker room before games.
I mean, there is always a stigma, isn't there? Mental health. For some unknown reason, we just don't want to talk about it. We don't want to admit it. In the dressing room, do you think this is rife and it's something that we've really got to address? So, particularly, and I say this, and I hope this doesn't sound like this is a sexist comment, but particularly in the men's game, more so than the women's.
Yeah, because I think this is it. Men, there's a lot of pressure on men, and now I'm a company coach in the city. I do, for the last 4 years, I've worked for 2 companies in the business world, and there's a pressure on men. I've sat with owners of big companies who they're expected to lead. They're precious at home with the wife and the kids, and they're away from home, and they're flying to America and coming back, and there's all this pressure all the time on these guys, and where is that space to create identification? Where is that space to go up? I'm terrified. I'm terrified of the next quarter's figures. I'm terrified of the next year. I'm scared. No one says that. But it's nice because you're starting to see Tyson Fury and big characters come and talk about it. I think Erling Haaland, with the piece with Gary Neville I saw recently, saying, I feel nervous and anxious. And this is great because, working with people, you have to admit this stuff. Now you can go, okay, so his celebration and meditation, there's a lot in that. And I'm surprised no one's talking about that. This man probably has so much fear of failure, but he uses it really well to drive himself, and then he finds presence and silence before performance. Yet none of that's being taught in schools, academies. Presence, meditation, what are we looking to do? Just, separate from the fear and get into feelings, and that's what Haaland's doing. That's the superpower that he's showing at the moment. No one's really talking about it.
Oh gosh, we need to talk.
Powerful stuff.
It is
powerful. This is Kobe Bryant. This is what his message was. It's this ability to feel the fear, because fear is good. We're not saying we don't want fear. Fear has to be there, but it's like, how do we use that?
So it's like, I've read your website. You call it sort of harnessing.
Harnessing fear, yeah.
So how do you go about helping people? I mean, what's your...
Well, you have to lead them. You have to first of all lead them to their feelings. Like, let's talk about what you're afraid of. And we have to really unpack that.
Sometimes though, I guess people are scared of opening Pandora's box a little bit. You dip your toe, that might feel okay, but you go a little deeper.
Well, yeah, and I don't.
You're talking about
people
really
come to me generally, so it's a bit. They're at that point where I can't do it anymore. That's a great point, and that's not a rock bottom of losing everything like I did. I can't spend another 8 weeks out of this team not playing well, seeing the guys winning, and I know I'm twice the player than the guy in my position, but I can't find my form. You might be ready now to have a look at that and go, okay, well, let's talk about that.
I just want to get you on a couple of things, because there's 2 things that's happened today, and you did touch on it, in terms of like Steve Bruce.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what sort of advice do you give to... You talked about Eddie Boothroyd. Where'd you go with it?
Well, and of course I know Alex well, Steve's son, and what do you do? I mean, it's like anything in a high performance job. You have to unpack stuff after a loss and after losing your job. I find that it sums it up best like this. United played City the other week, and Gary Neville made a brilliant comment. He said, he talked about anxiety and fear and nervousness in Manchester United, and he said, this is the bit that needs to be analysed on Monday morning. And I remember thinking, yeah, you're right. Not sure it will be. Not sure it will be. And so that's like, let's go into that. How did that fear affect your decisions? I work with a lot of coaches now. It's like, okay, if you don't deal with those 10 fears that you just told me, losing your job, not getting promoted, every decision will come from that. You know, tactically you might make a decision and you haven't dealt with the initial fear that creates.
Gosh.
So it's interesting stuff. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Deep though.
It is very deep.
But it has to be.
I am enjoying it. Look, one more question. I mean, because the other story that's broken today is Enoch Nweba.
Terrible.
Yeah, and he's having his career ended not on his terms. That's a tough one to deal with, right?
I can't begin to imagine. But I think actually it's the same thing as the tools that I try and lead guys to are words like acceptance, powerlessness, surrender. These are big words that aren't used in high performance cultures. Acceptance, you have to accept everything, and that's a period of grief for him. He'll have to go through a period now of grieving that, and there'll be a part of him that will never recover from that. And you have to accept that. You've lost a career that's your number one love. How do you ever get over that? Probably never. Okay. You know, and so just to be able to talk about that and just take your time, but acceptance has to be there. What you don't want to hear, and people love you and the people around you, they want to drag you away from that pain as quick as possible.
Yes.
But you don't want that, and it ends up pushing people away. You just want to sit with someone, I understand, yeah, me too. And they're two powerful words, me too, I use a lot.
I'll take that. Look, it's been fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for your time.
Right, so another career milestone for Cristiano Ronaldo will have reaction after he joined the 700 Club.